We are all adults here. We better be all adults. If you're not an adult, please do leave the room. My channel is not for non-adults. But I wanted to just come on and do a quick video. I actually saw some younger people. Hey, Dark Prophet. I actually saw some younger people covering some of these topics and doing some videos like this. And I thought, isn't it always the ones with no experience in life that have the most to say about things? So yeah, so I'm going to go through a list of questions, high goodness rated, and I'm just going to give my answers to these questions. So this should be pretty interesting. Again, my channel isn't for children, period. So if you're not an adult, go ahead and leave. We're not going to do anything X-rated, but we are going to have a mature conversation. So that's just some food for thought. So we're going to start mild, and then we're going to build up to the more risque things. Hi, Flycy. So number one, are relationships overrated? And I would have to say that no, relationships aren't overrated, but I do think that dating is overrated. I think having a long-term relationship is actually super valuable to people. Nobody wants to be old and alone. Having a family obviously comes with a lot of perks. Those are people that are going to care for you unconditionally. Those are people when you have something horrible or gross happen to you, they're going to be there for you, take care of you when you are sick. Your beauty, your money, your bad jokes, none of those things matter to them. They just love you. So I don't think relationships are overrated, but I do think dating is overrated. I think spreading yourself out like Halloween candy is a bit overrated. Oh, you have a question? Okay, ask your question, Dr. Dark Prophet. Do men see women as objects is question number 2. I don't think men see women as objects per se. This is something that you hear like kind of thrown out there by feminists a lot. But I do think somewhere that women are very unrealistic in their interaction with men is that if you have ever been with a man, you have to consider what they do to us in bed, right? I think men see women differently than them. In the sexual act, women, no matter if they're topping or not, are going to be the most in their most submissive position to men. And anybody that's had any sort of sex in any position other than missionary is going to know that it's hard probably to disassociate all of that from womanhood. So men view us extremely differently than them. I don't think they don't think we're people. I think they recognize we're people. I think they just don't look at us in the same way they look at other men. And that's literally due to the fact that we're a lot different than them. We bleed, we have breasts. You know, Obsidian was painting this picture over on Nyla's stream the other day about riding a woman like I think he called it the chariot, where you grab her arms and put them behind her back and use her arms for leverage for sex. Once somebody does something like that to you, you can't really expect them to view you exactly the way they view other men. So it's not so much that women are objectified. No, Katina, do not let your daughter tune in and listen. All he talks about is your body. Well, that's what I mean. It's like, I don't think they view us as objects. I think once you do a certain amount of intimacies with women, you do view them as different, right? It's like, I know this woman has probably had all these things done to her. So I think they view us as different, not necessarily as objects. But I think that there is a lot of power in that too. The reason, you know, the same thing that causes us to be viewed differently by them is also what causes their protective mechanisms to kick in, is also what affords us some privilege in society. So, you know, we can't keep the good part without, you know, taking the bad part as well. The next question, question number 3 is, I like you, but I don't want a commitment. When somebody says that to you, I feel like men say this more than women. Women are kind of almost always shooting for the commitment. But to me, the I like you, but I don't want a commitment thing means I just want to have sex with you. I think people should say that. I think that's a more honest statement. Like, I just want to have sex with you. That's what I want. And I think women can't really get mad at that because if you're giving out sex without a commitment, you can't get mad when somebody goes, I just want the milk and not the cow. There's no incentive. So I think women, we give away a lot of our power when we're having sex with people who don't want a commitment with us. It might seem fun at the time, but the thing is, there is a stigma, fair or not, attached to women in promiscuity. And it also devalues us in the man's eyes because most men, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but most men, the prize that they're going for is sex with you. So if that's the prize, why would you win the prize and keep running the race? That is the question. Do you know what I mean? Like, once you have the prize, why are you still running? And so I think we have to ask ourselves that. The next question, question number 4, is body confidence during sex. I think this applies to both men and women, but especially to women. I think women don't realize how attractive we are to men. Like, here on YouTube, we hear men like poking fun at this or that, you know? And I think that this is pretty funny because even me, like here on YouTube, I've had people point out qualities about me, like they're the worst thing ever. But like in real life, I find that men are extremely attracted to me in the real world. So, you know, I feel like a lot of times we're too hard on ourselves. This idea that we literally have to be perfect to be attractive, and that, you know, then you have women who want to have sex with the lights off, and, you know, we're sucking in our tummies, or we're, you know, trying to poke out our butts, or, you know, pop out our chests, like whatever we're trying to do. The thing is, men are very attracted to women. And during sex, you'll have a way better sex if you're not concerned about body positivity during sex. I think women don't recognize, in the words of my best friend, okay, 2 of my best friends in the world, 2 of the people I love the most outside of my man are also men. And in the words of one of them, he said, pussy is a powerful thing. That is what he said. And I think women don't recognize that about ourselves. So women have a leg up just by being female in attractiveness. All women are not attractive, but an unattractive woman will always be more attractive than an unattractive man, if that makes sense. I didn't see your question. What is it? I don't think you should have sex with your best friend unless you want to marry her. I don't think you should be in a relationship with your best friend unless you want to marry her. Because once you cross the friendship, so Dark Prophet said, I think me and one of my best friends have started getting feelings for each other, but I don't know how to try anything and I don't want to mess up the friendship. How can I approach without making it weird? You can't approach it without making it weird. I would say, unless you're ready to sacrifice your friendship, then you should probably not date your friend. I don't find that most people are mentally mature enough to date their friends and maintain a friendship. Now, I've mentioned this before, that of the men that I've dated, I'm friends with all of them. And if we don't talk regularly, like we're still on good terms, except for one. And actually, a couple of my exes watch my channel. And you don't see them out in the streets talking crazy about me because we still love each other. Not a romantic love, but we definitely still love each other. So I think that that is rare. I don't think people can maintain healthy relationships with somebody after they cross the line. So you need to decide how much you like this person. If it's just you want to have sex with that person, then probably keep your friendship. If you're thinking like potential wife material, then it might be worth it to you to roll the dice. You kind of have to You have to decide. Goodness Greatest Abuse said, my friend said the same thing. Pussy is power. It really is. And, you know, I think that's why a lot of men have problems with women is they recognize there's a power imbalance. So you'll hear things you'll hear men saying things to kind of devalue the power of a woman, like, you know, you're going to hit the wall and da 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 da. And whilst there is attractiveness in younger women because a lot of women don't age well, the reality is a fine woman who is 30 or 40 is going to be fine no matter what. Now, that's not going to stop men from being attracted to her that she's in her 30s or 40s. If you're attractive, you're attractive. And all 20-year-olds don't look that great. You know, honestly, these days, I see a lot of people in their 20s who look the same age as me. And I have a child in his 20s. So I think that when you consider it like that, pussy really is power. Honestly, the best thing we can be as women are feminine, attractive, and yeah, feminine and attractive. Men are really simple. They're simple, you know, they're simple creatures in that if you don't annoy them and you're nice to look at and you're feminine, they really enjoy that. And I mean, there's really nothing wrong with that, you know? But yeah, pussy is power. I think that's really like the whole MGTOW movement. I think it's actually being angry at that. I think it's men being like, oh, these women are getting away with like so much. And a lot of women do, but I think we're reaching a day and age where men are actually upset at femininity and they're upset at, well, I wouldn't say femininity per se. I think men are upset that women have a societal position because vagina and female beauty is valued so much. But at the same time, women, you have the whole feminist movement of idiots who are actually not bringing the femininity to the table and the submission and obedience to the table, but are still reaping the benefits of the pussy is power movement, you know? And so I think we're in this weird place in society now where, you know, men are starting to feel some kind of way about that because they're not getting the benefits that would normally come with vagina having power. And that is female loyalty, female submission, femininity, you know, not competing with women, things like that. It's like a new age. So I have to say this, though, vagina is losing power because so many of the younger generations are devaluing it. Faulty Charger said, how do I approach a woman on the street in a respectful way without them thinking I just want to get laid? Well, I have to be really honest with you. If a man approaches me, I think that I automatically assume that he feels I'm somebody he would like to have sex with. Because let's be real, that is kind of the motivation for approaching women. It's not like you want to bag them right there, but it is like, I see myself having sex with this woman potentially, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get shot down. I think for me, I like respectful approaches. So simply striking up like an actual conversation, or coming right out and saying, you know, hi, I'm so-and-so, you know, I was wondering if you'd be available for lunch sometime, like kind of cutting to the chase. But anything other than, anything other than overtly disrespectful comments. So you are really beautiful is nice. That is definitely a nice thing to hear. But I would even say shy away from that, especially if the woman really is beautiful, right? But kind of just cut to the chase of what you want in a respectful way. And always, always introduce yourself first. I think that is really nice because otherwise I feel like it's very awkward. But with that said, I strongly advise just walking up to people in the club or going to people online or going to people on the street and hitting on them. And the reason that I say this is I think that's where a lot of men and women end up in bad relationships. In my opinion, The best way to meet somebody is through mutual acquaintances. Those are the best ways to meet people, through mutual acquaintances, through networking, through, you know, work, not in your office, but maybe like, you know, somebody that is affiliated in your industry that you meet that way. Like, I think that is the best way to meet people. I do not advise just approaching people in the street, because somebody may look good, but they may have the soul of a rat, you know? So literally when you approach people in the street, you're legit just approaching them based on their physical appearance, and you don't know what package you're going to get. Normally, when you meet people through mutual acquaintance, other people know them, and you get to see them in social settings. You get to hear other people's opinions about them. And so it's not just physical attraction. There's a level of pre-vetting going on that you can't do via a dating app or via picking somebody up on the street or on BART. Well, I guess you guys all don't have BART because you're not in the Bay Area, but you know, I would just advise against it. But if you had to do it, I would say introduce yourself first and kind of cut to the chase in a super polite way. That's the way I would do it, but don't do it. Having said that, just don't do it. Don't just approach random people, because you can't tell what a person's like based on looking at them. And that's how you end up with the baby's moms that are dragging you to court for child support. That's how you end up with the jerk guy who cheats on you with 15 people or lies about everything about himself. Like, that is how you end up in those weird relationships, is when you don't have a way to pre-vet a person because you guys aren't running in the same circles, you weren't introduced, like, you know what I mean? You just legit have no idea who this person is, and nobody you know has any idea who this person is. And I feel like most bad relationships come from situations like that. And most lasting relationships come from people being introduced to each other. Maybe you guys go to the same church. Maybe, you know, like I said, some sort of working relationship, like people who aren't complete and total strangers. Do not say, "Hey, shorty, what your name is." Do not say that. Lindor said, Irene, I remember the comedian Cat Williams stating that a real man isn't judging a woman's body while he's making love to her. That's for boys. That's true. And honestly, the sex will be better and he will pay less attention to your body. Do you know when you hyper focus on something? It's kind of like when you are when you're trying to be quiet. Have you ever tried to be quiet, like walking through the house or something, and everything you do makes hella noise? And you're just like, what is going on? Like the floors start creaking. They've never creaked before. I think that applies to sex too. When you're hyper focused on, okay, let me pop my butt just right so it looks good from the back while no, girl, don't do that. First of all, he's going to hyper focus because you're hyper focused. Number two, it's going to ruin the sex. Honestly, some of the best ways to make it feel good for your partner may not be the most attractive. Sex is not an art in attractiveness. Sex is an art of making a good experience, a good erotic experience. And honestly, some of the things we find least attractive, men actually find that super hot. Like, you know, men are into stuff and I'm like, that's actually, oh, you know, like I wouldn't want to see that. You know, like, you know, men like spit and stuff like that, you know, not spitting on their face, but you know, you guys are adults, you know where spit is valuable. They're into that. So I think a lot of times we think some things are not attractive or nasty or something, and we're too worried about that during sex. And guys aren't worried about that. Like, the freakier and the grimier, the better. You know, the more you're moving your body for optimal, you know, penetration and feeling, the better. It's not a beauty show. It's not a fashion show. But women were highly critical of themselves. I heard a woman say that she was fixated on how the edges of her mouth curved rather than went to a point when she smiled. Guys don't care about that. So I think sometimes women were so focused. And honestly, your female body is just attractive. That's what you just really have to realize. If you're a woman and you've got a body, you're kind of winning. Okay. And confidence will go a long way. Thank you, King Murphy. So let's go to the next question. It is, so he won't eat you out, but he wants head. Okay, so this is a really funny question. Yes, I feel like oral sex has become like par for the course with sex these days, and all men kind of expect oral sex. The thing is that honestly, if you are not in a marriage, right, or a committed, long-term committed relationship, you can really catch a lot of diseases through oral sex, and most men aren't going to want oral sex with a condom, right? Because a lot of men are very interested in protecting themselves, but they don't have the same interest in protecting you when it comes to oral sex. So I do think it's common for men to want a lot more oral sex. With that said, there are some men who really get off on giving head to women. A lot of men are into that. Me personally, I'm just not into oral sex, period. Like, obviously, I'm an adult, so I engage in oral sex. But for me, and maybe it's just because my man has really good dick, but maybe it's just me, but because he can make me come via penetration, and I'm kind of spoiled in that way, I always want to have actual sex because I'm going to have an orgasm with actual sex. Now, that is very rare for women to be in a relationship with a man who every time, or even most of the time, or for some women, sadly, even some of the time, is capable of bringing you to orgasm via penetration. So then oral sex becomes very, very important, right? Because then it's like, then you'll never get to come. And how many women have actually been in sexual experiences, and how regular is this, where women cannot come to orgasm? And so, that then you get, finger stimulation and oral stimulation as almost being a necessity to bring a woman to orgasm. And strangely, a lot of men will try to replace vaginal orgasm for women with oral copulation. Now, here's the thing. I think you're doing a woman a disservice because the orgasms are two different kinds of orgasms. And vaginal orgasm through vaginal stimulation is more intense, and it hits a different spot. It comes from a different place in the woman. So I'll say this. For whatever reason, men find giving women oral sex to be way more of a commitment sort of thing than, not all men, but a lot of men, right? Then they find getting fellatio. I don't really know. See, Snapzilla Gorilla said oral sex with a condom? Heck nah. But here's the thing, Snapzilla, especially women who are having casual sex, which I don't advise, don't drive the price of pussy down, girls. Especially women that are having casual sex, you really should have a condom on the man. Men don't like it, but the thing is, you can catch all the diseases out there in your mouth, all of them, from AIDS to hepatitis to herpes, to gonorrhea, to chlamydia, but men don't like it, right? And the thing is that, men are more like expecting oral sex to be a part of the sexual experience, but not all men think giving oral sex is part of the sexual experience. But I will say this, for men who don't like to give oral sex, if you learn how to give your woman an orgasm vaginally, through penetration, she won't need as much oral sex. You know what I mean? For a lot of women, oral sex is the only way that they're going to get to have an orgasm. And nobody wants to be in a sexual relationship where, like, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to orgasm. And like I said, unfortunately, that is the case for a lot of women. Women engage in a lot of what I call mercy sex, which is that you're going through the motions for 30 minutes to an hour. He has an orgasm and you don't. Now imagine a man would literally flip out if he was having sex with a woman for 30 minutes and then she came and he didn't get to come. But it happens to women all the time. And I'm not a proponent of it should. I don't think that it should be like that. But like I said, I could be spoiled because my man is gifted. So maybe I have like, King Murphy said there's a new study that oral sex causes cancer of the mouth now too. I mean, I don't know. For me, I feel that if two people know what they're doing, then vaginal sex should be pretty awesome, right? But I do find when I talk to people, a lot of people don't know what they're doing, or they don't know how to spice it up, or they're not adventurous with sex, or they, whatever it is, I know somebody who doesn't feel that oral sex is appropriate sex at all, that it's a kind of sodomy. So there are people that have that belief as well, which I find pretty interesting. So let's see. The next one is, should I send nude pictures? Okay. Divine Conception said, Irina's in rare form today. Not really, you guys. I mean, it's just sex. You guys know I'm a mom. I have adult children. Clearly, I've had a lot of sex because I didn't produce all my kids without engaging in sex. I don't think sex is a taboo topic. This isn't going to be like porn on this channel or anything like that. But I think that we can have these conversations. And I think I get tired of 20-year-olds talking about like answering questions like this. Like, what do you know? Like, what life have you lived? You don't know crap. So I feel like sometimes it's nice just to have conversations with mature people who actually have a clue what the heck they're talking about. So let's see. Should I send nude pictures is the next question. And I would say that nude pictures can be fun. This is what I will say to women, because, women, we aren't really trying to get nude pictures of guys like that. Like most of us we don't care about that. So really it's men that like to get pictures, sexual pictures from us. So hear me very clear, ladies. If you send nude pictures, you better have something on that man. I mean, you better have video of him doing something. You better have something on that man so that if he ever tries you, it will be the biggest regret of his life. Barring that, I would say never put your face or anything identifying in a picture. If you have tattoos or anything like that, I would say definitely don't do it if you are not married or if you haven't had given birth to that person's child. Don't do things like that. But I will say this, in a marriage and things like that, I think making pornography, like husband-wife porn, not that you share with the world, but like creating movies just for your husband's entertainment, I think is fine. I think pictures are fine and all that. But as far as the guy you're banging and you're going to probably be dating for 4 to 6 months or, these days a week, no, don't send him nudes. Not unless you have a way to destroy his whole life. Because trust me, a lot of guys are sleazebags. And the thing is, if you don't really know somebody, you don't know that they're not going to put your pictures out on the net. So I would not do that if you value yourself. Also, what special do you have to give to your husband if you do every single thing with every dude that you meet? Like, leave something for your future husband. If you're not going to give him your virginity, which would be nice if you did, but if he can't even get your virginity, can he be the only one that gets naked pictures of you? Can he be the only one that you've ever made a movie with? Can your husband get anything that you haven't already given to other men? That is the question. Can he have anything that hasn't already been offered up to somebody who didn't feel you were worth keeping? So I think that that's just some food for thought for ladies. But my end all be all on the should I send nude pictures thing is, don't send anything to anybody you don't have weight on. If you don't have anything on them, or if they're a person with nothing to lose, they're working at McDonald's or something. So even if you had something on them, it wouldn't matter. If they don't have something to lose and you don't have anything on them, then you better not send them anything. If you simply can't stop yourself, please keep your head and your tattoos out of the picture so that it's just a headless woman. It could be anybody's breasts. It could be anybody's butt. But more importantly, maybe just don't do it, because especially if you don't have your virginity, there has to be something that your husband is getting that other men have not already gotten from you. You want to be able to offer your future husband something that other men haven't gotten from you. Anything, you know what I mean? So maybe let's just leave something sacred, just something sacred. I feel like nothing is sacred anymore. So OG Bootsy said, Irene, Yvette, that doesn't show trust. Okay, so this is what I'll say, OG Bootsy. If you're not married to that person or you haven't given birth to their children, what trust? This is a person, you know, male or female, that does not value you enough to keep you for life. So what trust should you have in a person who is only having sex with you? Right? If the relationship is purely you guys going out for dates and having sex, how much trust are you going to put in that person? Because the only involvement you have in their life is sex and dating. So I would say, you know, we need to not be so trusting, you know, or just don't do it. Or just don't do it. But like I said, you know, maybe I'm a horrible person because I'll be ready to destroy somebody. I wish somebody would. Because anybody that ever would get a picture of me, I would have dirt on you, okay? You would have something to lose. I'd be capable of ruining a career or something. We're both going to be nice to each other. But no, seriously, I just would not advise doing it, you know? I just would not advise doing it, like at all whatsoever. So, and that's essentially, oh, he's joking. I was about to say, oh no, Ariel. I'm mad at Ariel. Ariel gets on my nerves. She said, I am saving my butthole for my husband. I know, like but literally, Ariel, some people didn't even save that, but I have to say something. Let's just talk about anal sex in heterosexual couples. If a man wants anal sex, to me, he's gay. Is this going to trigger some men? You are highly questionable as a homosexual in my eyes. Why any man would want to put his penis where somebody defecates from is beyond me. But if you have a vagina available to you and you have the desire to put your penis in a butt, then that's not going to be a man that I'm going to be in a relationship with. I'm going to tell you what we won't be doing in the bedroom. I wish a man would. I wish a man would even try to take his finger and rub on my butthole. Like, it would end our relationship. That would be the end of our relationship. No, there would be no relationship. What interest do you have in my butthole? You should not have any interest in the hole on my butt. Okay? I'm a full woman. Okay? You should have no interest in the hole in my butt. If you do, we are not meshing. You're going to need to be with another woman. Just since Ariel brought it up. Like, oh, please don't let that be the only thing. Please do not let that be the only thing. Goodness Rated said some women love anal sex. I don't believe that. I don't believe any women love it. I do not believe women love it. OG Bootsy, that is so gross. I'm like offended by that comment. Ugh. Like, honestly, so OG Bootsy was saying, like, basically, like, what about on the period? Nope. First of all, I'm not trying to have anything close to that area of my body on my period. If you don't just let me bleed, like if you don't have enough self-control to just stay away from my nether regions for a week, because I have really, me personally, and I have really high estrogen levels. Like my estrogen is really high. So I'm pretty textbook. I go 7 days. if you can't stay away from my nether regions for 7 days, you might have some sort of sexual addiction. Like, we can do other stuff, but as far as anal sex, you know, like as an excuse for the period, no, that is nasty. But everybody has their own preference. For Irene, though, that's gay to me. That's very homosexual. You guys know I have like zero tolerance for homosexuality. No, because if you'll stick yourself in a woman's butt, you'll stick yourself in anybody's butt. That's my theory. Okay. Like, no, no, no. That could be for the next woman, but that would never be for any man that I would be with, because no, because the minute you expressed an interest in that, I would express disinterest in you. So the next woman can have you. You could be her prize, because you would not be able to be my prize. I am just, oh my gosh, Ariel, no. That was just messy. That is just messy. That is just absolutely messy. OG Bootsy, you're in rare form. OG Bootsy can't be a part of this conversation. You need to stop. Okay, let's see. Exactly. Dark Prophet, you're looking real gay, like real. I'm gonna tell you something though. A lot of men are very questionable in their behavior. They do a lot of things that are questionable. I need zero questionability, okay? If I'm questioning whether or not you're fruity, I can't be in a relationship with you. You better not have a limp wrist. You better not ever impersonate a woman. Don't ever. I hate when guys do that. Do not ever impersonate a woman. You know how some guys like try to talk in a high-pitched voice like they're mimicking a woman? Nope. That creeps me out. Don't ever do it. I just don't like any level of questionable behavior. Like any level of questionable behavior. Oh, Paul, thank you. Paul coming in here with some stuff that makes sense. The practice of anal sex originated with ancient homosexuals. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Finley. No anal sex. I just want to make that clear. I'm gonna need to let me see. I don't understand. I know a lot of men who would never even think of such a thing. Okay, so maybe I just know a lot of men who, you know, maybe we all just know different kinds of men, because the men I know, they would never think of such a thing. And I would never think of being with a man who thought such a thing was appropriate. I mean, you better fake like you don't like it if you want to be with me, because you better not even ask me, okay? Because if you even ask, I'm going to leave you. That is like a deal breaker. That is a hard full stop. Okay, so the next one is dating your friend's ex. What if the friend is married now? Okay, so I guess that's like 2 parts. OG Bootsy, that is not being sexually liberated, okay? That is being sexually deviant. I need you to be less liberated. So with that said, the next question is, what about dating your friend's ex? And the second part to that question is, what if the friend is married? So that means, I guess, can you date your friend's ex if your friend is married? Or can you date a friend's ex at all? You know what I really wonder? I would wonder, what are we talking about? Yeah, no, you better not put a finger, a mouth. Are we going to be on this butt thing? Stay. If you can smack the butt, you can squeeze, grab the butt. Do not touch the butthole. Don't put your mouth there. Don't put your tongue there. Don't put your finger there. Like, first of all, if you put your mouth on my butthole, we'll never kiss again. Feces comes out of there. Like, what kind of sick, perverted, y'all? Look, I like a lot of stuff. I'm not a prude at all when it comes to sex, but like I said, it's a hard full stop for me with this butt stuff. I'm questioning why people are so into buttholes. That is what I'm questioning. Like, what the hell? That is the least attractive part of your body. That's the last place anybody should want to be. That's the area you only deal with when you defecate and bathe, okay? That's the only time. If you are pooping or cleaning it, otherwise, Leave it alone. Okay. Like, what the heck? I don't know why that is so hard to understand. So let's see. Dating your friend's ex. So this is what I will say. Um, what I will say is this. I would really question somebody who, OG Bootsy, you're nasty. You're like legit nasty. I cannot with you. Ariel said, I think anal is taboo. That's why people like it. I feel like once you have played in feces, okay, I see anal sex is just very popular, guys. But let me say this. Once you have played in feces, your sexual compass is going down the tubes. So just stay away from feces. Just say no to all things feces. That's what I'll say. If your sex involves something that's going to have you smelling like you just took a bowel movement, then you're probably doing the wrong thing. Now, as far as dating your friends' exes, I really question anybody who would want to have sex with somebody who has been with their friend. Like, do I want to share a penis with my friend? You know what I'm saying? Do I want to put my mouth on somebody's mouth who's had their mouth all over my friend's body? You know, I think if they have had intercourse, then you definitely should never date your friend's ex. I don't care if your friend is married. For me, it's like this. If you would date one of my exes, I don't want you around me. There are literally billions of people on this planet. You couldn't find anybody but somebody that I smashed to be with. I don't want you around me, especially if I'm married. You would never get another invite to my house. Okay? That would end our friendship on the principle of the thing, just on the principle, because it's nasty. You know, and my female friends can attest to this. When we all go out, let's say if I'm going on a double date and it's me, my man, and a woman and her man, I really only talk to the woman. I will be polite to the man, but you'll be lucky to get conversation out of me. You're sure as hell not going to get a whole relationship out of me, whether you guys break up or not. I'm not even trying to talk to you, okay? I'm not even trying to hold a conversation with you. There can never be a relationship because I don't really see what I have to talk to or about with somebody that my friend is dating before or after. I don't even want to discuss anything with you. I actually have a really close friend where her man did not like me because the first time we met, they had been dating for years and years and years. And the first time we met, I was polite to him, but I only had conversation for her. He accused me of being gay or us dating. No, fool, you just want some attention from me, and I'm not here to give you attention. I'll be polite. I'll acknowledge if you speak to me, I'll speak back. But as far as like holding whole deep conversations with you and stuff, I don't even understand it. So coming from a woman who is not even really trying to talk to my friend's man, like other than niceties and not being rude, I don't even want to talk to you. For what? What do I need to talk to you for? I can't imagine being in a relationship with my friend's ex. But for some people who have no scruples about them, Twin said, I don't give a fuck if you're my boy and you try to smash my ex-wife, we might fight. Really? Really? Okay, so Dark Prophet said, if they never had sex, it's okay. Okay, so I will agree with that. If they have never had sex, but then how do you find that out? Like, how do you vet that? Hey, did you have sex with this person? I don't know how you would vet it, but I would say that would be, I guess that would be an exception to me. But for me, I just wouldn't do it. Like I said, I just wouldn't do it. Just full stop. Like, not at all. I just wouldn't do it. I just feel like there's just too many people in the world. I don't need to share people. It'll be fine. I don't need to share people at all. I just don't like questionable behavior, period. Period. I'm not a habitual line crosser. And if somebody tries to cross the line with me, I will shut that shit all the way down in the most embarrassing possible way. Just shut it completely down. We'll never have a conversation again. But I just, I guess that's just the way that I personally am. So I have to say, for me, it's a negative. No, you cannot date your friend's ex. I don't care if they are married. And I would strongly advise anybody if you're married or in a relationship and you have a friend that dated one of your exes, I would keep them away from any of my future partners. And that may not be a friend to you. It really may not be, especially among women, because women have a real difficult time with seeing a woman in a happy relationship, and they are going to want that man. They're going to want the man that the other woman has, not something that resembles her relationship, but they want to take themselves and insert themselves in another woman's position. And because so many women are dysfunctional that way, I would be red flag from here to kingdom come. Look, bitch, don't you even wear anything highly inappropriate around my man, okay? Don't even do that. All right? You know the friend who will come and stay at your house and put on her booty shorts and her, negligee that's cut really low. I wear like sexy stuff around my house, like little shorts and little like lace camis and stuff like that as like my house clothes. But if I were going to somebody's home where their man is, like if it's just not going to be us girls, then I'm going to put something on my body. I have a problem with people who even don't have the courtesy to do that. Look, I look out for hoish behavior. Everybody knows I'm not afraid of sexiness, like attractiveness. I love women that are beautiful, all of that. But see, I don't like hoish behavior. Like you should not be, there's a lot of things I don't like in relationships. I don't like when, and I know somebody that does this. I know a woman who calls the friends and carries on friendships with the friends of her man. Like she calls them up and she discusses her relationship with his friends. She DMs his friends on Facebook. I'm like, I would leave that bitch. Like, girl, what are you calling my guys for? And he has asked her to stop, and this little hooker won't even stop. See, women like that, I can have in my space. You have like no boundaries. What the heck? I have so I have several of my man's friends' phone numbers I've never called. Unless my man was like with him and he's like, just call me on his phone. I don't call. Okay. I was in Texas and my man was not out in Texas. And one of his good friends, he's known for like 30 years, lived really close to me, like literally on the same street, but like I was on the West End, he was on the East End. I never picked up a phone to be like, man, I don't know anybody out here. Can we do lunch? I never picked up a phone and was like, yo, can we just have a conversation? It's innocent because we're both in a relationship. You're my man's friend. I would never. But see, a lot of people have no scruples about them. A lot of women won't check themselves. A lot of men won't check themselves. So for me, I don't deal with questionable people. Like when you start doing questionable stuff in my world, when you start doing questionable stuff in my world, I will just dismiss you because I like healthy relationships with people. So I'm always on the lookout for ridiculous behavior. You know what they say? Like, don't tempt the devil. A lot of times we see little red flags in people. So long story short, what am I saying? No, don't date your friend's ex. And if somebody thinks to even ask me, like if somebody even approached me to ask me, Irene, can I date so-and-so? We would not be friends. girl, you better not even come and ask me a stupid ass question like that, okay? Like, it's a problem for you to think it, no less ask me. Like, what are you doing? You're trying to end a friendship because we will not be dealing with each other anymore. That's going to be the end of our friendship. I wish somebody would. And I've actually never had it happen because I don't hang out with women that are funny style. Like me personally, I don't hang out with women that are funny, but more importantly, when women, because I've known a lot of women, you know, I knew a woman for years. She dated the same man for like over a decade, and she never would bring me around him. But the first time she brought me around him, she learned something about me I don't think she expected, which is I don't play with other people's men. I don't do anything inappropriate. You know, I had, if you guys can believe this, way, way back in the day when I was in my 20s, I had a friend whose man asked her to ask me if I would do a threesome with them. I was like, girl, if you don't get rid of him, that ended our friendship. I cannot be around him. I'm not even trying to hang out with your man if I think they're attracted to me like that. That is nasty. And I have a problem that you would even want to be with him. How embarrassing to have your man go to your friend, have your man tell you to go to your friend and proposition that he can have sex with her. Like, I wish somebody would. I wish somebody would. And the best friend I could be to her was to tell her, hell no, and stop hanging out with her and her man. Because I'm not about to have somebody dressing me down every time they lay eyes on me. Like, that is nasty. I won't even hang out with people if your man is inappropriate. If I see him like undressing me with his eyes, I just won't be in that situation. I'm not going to be a part of disrespecting another woman. But all women are not like that. And a lot of men feel like, you know, it's community vagina. People do what all the time, Finley? What do people do all the time? Oh my goodness. Ariel said, my married coworkers asked me for a threesome. Oh, heck no. You guys, I had a really uncomfortable situation once in San Francisco. There was this giant man. He was a giant. He had to be like 6'6" and 400 pounds. He was a big, giant man. And he had a big, giant wife. She was definitely over 6 foot tall. And you guys, I am like 5'2". Okay. So these people were literally two of me, and big and wide. And he was like, so you want to come up? You want to come to our place with us and this and that? I've never been so uncomfortable in my life. I was like, first of all, these people are 2 times my size and height. They could just kidnap me. I have never been so uncomfortable as when that giant man and his giant wife propositioned me. I was so devastated. I was just like, oh no. If y'all don't take your giant drunk selves on and leave me alone, I do not want to do a threesome with you. I do not. I'm too selfish of a person to engage in a threesome anyway, okay? I am selfish and jealous. I'm jealous and selfish, okay? I really, really am. There's a whole lot of stuff I just don't approve of. I'm jealous. I'm too jealous and selfish. Somebody will lose their life. It's better. It's better. Oh, okay. Ariel said, I think she said, oh, she found another job after that. Oh, yeah, that was uncomfortable. I believe you. Oh, Ariel, they were white, Ariel. Ariel's messy. They were a white couple. Oh, my goodness. I was devastated. I was devastated. Okay, Rosie, it's not that I don't want a man to even look my way, but I don't want a man that's with a woman to be looking my way. Because I'm going to tell you something. First and foremost, it makes me uncomfortable, right? It makes me uncomfortable because if I were in that woman's position, I would be uncomfortable. And number two, women will often take that out on you. I don't know how many women You guys cannot imagine how many women I've had genuinely not like me, and not because I did anything, because they don't like how I look. You know what I'm saying? They don't like what I look like. And they assume I'm going to be a certain way because of however I look. Because a lot of times with women, let's be honest, women, a lot of times with women, when we are mentally and emotionally immature, we view other attractive women as competition. And it can be uncomfortable. And we feel like we have to one up the next attractive woman in the room. We're not comfortable with it. The only time a group of attractive women are comfortable is when there are no men around. That is a lot of women's attitudes. So I don't put women in positions I don't want to be in myself. And I feel I'm probably even more diligent about it because I'm a very lascivious, sort of flirtatious person. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I'm very sexy. Like in real life, I'm very sexy. Okay. I have been told, and I listen to men's feedback, that, I have a bedroomy way that I look at people. Like I look like I'm soliciting by my physical appearance, right? By the way I look at people, or I'm really feminine. I'm very touchy. Like I hug, I touch a lot, things like that. I dress really feminine. I dress pretty sexy. I don't wear like, mini skirts and all that, but you guys know I show some cleavage. I'll wear a form-fitting dress. I don't wear pants, so I only, wear dresses and stuff like that. But I have to be mindful that I don't want to make another woman feel as if we're in competition with each other, because we're not in competition with each other. And sometimes she may not realize that. So I make sure that my behavior makes it very clear that I'm in no way, shape, or form attempting to compete with you. Like we are friends. And so my female friends can feel comfortable with me because they know, like, girl, we're friends. We're not in competition. I'm not going to be the friend to tell you, that you look good when you don't. I'm not going to be the friend to not want you to wear a cuter dress than her, or, you know what I'm saying, to hope you don't look as good as her, or to see what you're wearing and run upstairs and change my clothes because I'm not matching up to you. Like, I'm not that chick. I'm just really not. Especially because I recognize that physicality is only superficial, right? And straight up, I don't have to be the most attractive woman in a room because I bring other things to the table other than looking good. So I'm comfortable with the package that is Irene. And also, every man is not a potential mate for me. I think a lot of women view men as potential mates. Like, even if you don't want them, women just like to feel like they're the chosen one, right? Even if you don't want the man, a lot of women just want to feel like they're the chosen one. For me, I don't want every man to need to want me. I don't care. First of all, honestly, I don't pay attention to people like that. I will barely remember that you were in the room. So I certainly don't have time to try to compete for your attention. I might miss out on the one that I want, worried about what every little random man is doing. So I let other women do that. Other women can sit and try to be, the biggest, brightest star amongst women in the room. But first of all, a man that's that base is not going to be my type. So there's no point in me doing the competition. Do you know what I'm saying? Because if you're that simple-minded, first of all, I would run you. Okay. First and foremost, if a man is that simple, I would run him. And if I can run a man, that's not going to be my type. I like a man to be over me. I don't want a man where if I can put on a low-cut top and a short skirt, he's going to start acting like a stupid head. That's not attractive. But women, a lot of times we appeal to lowest common denominator. It's something that we do. Ariel said, I had a friend that did that to me. She told me she was wearing jeans and sneakers. I wore sweatpants and she showed up in a dress. Yes. When women are intimidated by you, they will pull that crap. They really will. They want to see you downplay yours. I have literally had women tell me something looked good on me when they know it didn't look good on me. I've literally seen that. And I'm just like, really? I would never. I had a good friend who has beautiful thick legs, and she didn't like her legs. She would never wear a skirt. And I was like, we went shopping one day. This is back when we were 20s. And I was like, you should wear this mini skirt. This will look so cute on you. And she's been wearing dresses ever since then because I'm not a hater. Okay. I don't hate. I don't have to. You know, we could all win out here, but I don't feel like a lot of women feel that we can all win. A lot of women are shady, unfortunately. A lot of women are shady. Yeah, Ariel said that they're not friends anymore. She found out that she hated her. Yep. Women will have hateful friendships. They'll hate on each other and still be your friend. Because if you're close by, they can sabotage you. I knew a woman that was always feeding her skinny friend donuts and stuff. Every time she had something, I would sit there and watch this broad not eat, but be giving this girl all types of food in the hopes that she would get fat. I just, y'all, women are very, very shady. Women are so shady. It is ridiculous. Okay, so the next question is, what about age gaps? So I hear a lot of women in their 20s and a lot of older men. So let me just say this. Older men are attracted to young women, right? A lot of the time. People will say women in their 20s. The studies say that, but honestly, whenever white people put together a study, I don't really trust them because white people are very degenerate in their behavior. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that a bunch of white men want to have sex with like 18-year-olds, really 17, 16, 15-year-olds. I mean, if you look at pornography, it's all like barely legal and stuff like that. That's some white people stuff, okay? But I do think that men are often attracted to women that are somewhat younger than them. So my rule with age gaps is I would strongly advise all women to only date men that are at least 10 years older than them. So 10 years. There should be a decade, I feel, between you and your partner, give or take 1 or 2 years. Now, anything more than that is problematic for me because as a mother, so for example, I would not associate myself either in a relationship with or in a friendship with a man who would date somebody that we could be their parents. So I have a 24-year-old child. Therefore, I would not ever want any man or woman around me who would date anybody in their 20s. Because I don't want to have to worry about somebody being sexually attracted to my children. So that is my rule for age gaps. Like 10 years is the sweet spot. But once you become like old enough to be somebody's parent, you're really nasty to me. That's just me personally, my personal feelings. My personal feelings. So, oh, thank you, B1 for Life. That's so kind of you. So, Nakivia said, who would feed their friend their friend donuts? Yeah, she would feed her donuts and everything else. Is your name, what is your name? Is it Jack C. Threed? I don't know how to pronounce your name. How old I'm very old. I'm a very old lady. Don't let my looks fool you. I'm an old lady. I don't know that it's that I look young or if that young people are starting to look old. I feel like a lot of young people look very old. And I don't understand that. I don't understand young girls that put on tons of makeup and try to make themselves look old. I'm just like, stay young as long as you can. Stay young as long as you can. All right, so my last question is casual sex question mark. I don't know what that means. Casual sex question mark. I don't really agree with casual sex. For women, I feel like it drives down the value of women to have a lot of women engaging in casual sex. I also feel like you drive down your personal value because men are very judgmental about women who have had a lot of sex. But more than anything, like, who wants all the diseases? You know, like, who wants all the diseases? Who wants to have to get, like, there was that one celebrity, I know women that have had, okay, so there was a celebrity who said she had 2 abortions within like a 2-month period. I know women that have had like 7 abortions. And I'll hear men like heralding like, "Oh, this is so, women with no kids is wonderful." Let me tell you something. If a woman is having casual sex and she has no children, she's had abortions. And I don't really know that adds value. What it does do is it means that, and I think I've mentioned this on my channel before, I know of women who have had to have their cervixes sewn shut when they finally did decide to have kids because they had so many abortions. And they pry the cervix open during abortion. They've had so many abortions that their cervix can't stay closed so that they can naturally carry a baby. So I just feel like, especially for women, casual sex is very damaging. Like, artificial hormones or animal hormones for birth control aside, you know, toxic doses of chemicals aside for the morning after pill, having your cervix pried open and your literal child ripped out of your womb aside, I just think casual sex is a serious hard no for women. It also drives our value collectively down. So if women are wondering why men don't want to get married, it's because they don't have to get married to have access to women, because all these women are out here just having sex with everybody. So, that is problematic. Oh, Finley asked me, what is your opinion of dirty old men? Like Hugh Hefner, dirty? Like Hugh Hefner, dirty? I don't like dirty old men. You know what I'm saying? Maybe because I'm a mother. I think a lot of times these conversations look different once you're a parent and you're responsible for children. I don't like dirty freaks. I don't like dirty old women. I mean, I know a woman, my eldest son is very handsome. And a woman gave him her card and said she was a modeling agent and she wanted, a modeling scout or whatever. And she wanted, him to give her a call. So he came and he was like, "Oh, mom, somebody stopped me on the street, this lady, and she said she, was a modeling agent and all that." And I called her. I said, "Hi, this is my son's name's Mom. And he said you stopped him on the street and said you were interested in having him model for you." And we never heard from that woman again. Why? Because she was a dirty old broad who just wanted some young penis. She was not interested in him modeling. She was interested in having sex with my child. This is when he was a minor, when he was like in high school. So, yeah. That's my opinion on dirty old men and women. Is I don't do dirty and nasty. I don't even keep people around me that move that way. I'm telling you, people who are questionable in certain ways, because my hard limits are pedophilia and homosexuality. Like, I have zero tolerance for those 2 things. So if you start doing questionable stuff around me, I will get rid of you. Okay. I will permanently dismiss you from my life. I'm very, very particular about that. Nellie said, young people look old because we live a reckless life. I agree with that. So Atlanta Lady said, I was 20 and I dated a man 11 years older. So he was 31 and his kids were teenagers. Dang, when did he have his kids though, if his kids were teenagers? He had to have his kids when he was still a teenager. Rosie Harris said, men should not judge women on casual sex. Ooh, Rosie said men should not judge women based on casual sex. Yes, they should. Yeah, men should judge. I mean, let me tell you something. I teach my sons to judge women based on casual sex. I do. I teach my sons that if a woman is giving herself out like that, she's not the one for you. I actually tell my sons that. I tell my sons to marry a virgin. I do. You know, my sons don't have children. I'm not going to talk about their sexual life. My sons are not promiscuous, though. I tell my sons to marry a virgin. I tell them they don't want somebody who has no respect for themselves. I tell my sons that they are valuable and that they want a woman who highly values herself. So if she's easy for you to have, she is easy for other people to have. And she's not the one. That's what I tell my sons. So I think, you know, honestly, I would tell my daughters, I do tell my daughters at a way they can understand because my daughters are younger, something very similar. I tell them that a lot of men want sex and they will say that they love you. They will say they want to marry you. They won't marry you. They'll say they want to marry you. They'll say a lot of things to have sex with you. But a man that does that does not love you. And so he's not the one. So I teach both my male and female children to judge people based on their promiscuity. Because if you don't have self-respect enough to know that your body is valuable and that access to your body is something that someone must earn, then I don't want you with my child. And honestly, I look at the same thing in my relationships. You know, I'm looking for somebody that feels they have a high value as a person. If you don't have a high value for yourself as a person, and that when you have sex with somebody, you are opening yourself up to producing a child with them, you are opening yourself up to getting diseases from them. So if you don't, you're trusting them with your safety in your life. If you don't value yourself enough to be discriminatory in that choice, then how are you going to value me? So I'm looking for people that have a high self-worth. Because if you don't have a high self-worth, you're not going to value anybody else. Now, that's what I teach in my house. So, yeah. Nikivia said, casual sex is not safe. I don't understand why it's so popular. I don't understand either. I don't understand either. Finley Owen said, I'm a moral policeman and a judge. Well, I'm not a judge because I can't convict anybody of anything. But I do judge, right? And I'm not a moral policeman. If I was a moral policeman, I would not have my cleavage, you know? I wouldn't wear a tight dress. I'm not a moral policeman, but I have my own moral standards, right? And I think it's okay for people to have some level of standards. We all can be out here being hoes. That's what we cannot do. Omega Gaming Channel said, I never cared about numbers. Some people don't. Some people don't care about numbers. But the thing is, a lot of people do. Yes, Great Black Shark, a minor. An actual minor. That woman was pushing up on my son. We never heard from her again. She didn't expect me to be the one that called her, Nikibia. She did not expect me to be the one that called her. But I did. So yes, Kenny, she tried to get Teen Peen. She really, really did. So Ariel Ramirez said, virgins today an urban legend. Nope. I know a lot of people who are virgins, Ariel. I know a lot of people who are virgins. I know people who get married through arranged marriages, American women. So that still does go on. I know a lot of people who do. I have uncles whose marriages were arranged. And I know women whose marriages were arranged. So this does go on, but I do think it is not given as much light. And I do think you have to hang around like-minded people. I think it's harder if you're around a bunch of hoes to, you know, preserve your chastity, but it does happen. It definitely does. Um, Great Black said, Irene, do you really think it is realistic to search for a virgin? Virgins can still turn out to be terrible thoughts too. I mean, you must be talking about those Catholic virgins who try to talk about if you do anal, then it's not, it's not sex. I do think it's realistic. I think it's realistic if you're living a life where you're surrounded with people who share your moral compass. So maybe because I know of people, even widows, like, okay, so for example, widows or women like me who need to be remarried. You know, I know a woman who was a widow, and the pastor of my church and his wife found her next husband for her. It was a man who was widowed. I know of, you know, I have an uncle that was a virgin, and my grandpa, who was a bishop, introduced him to his wife, who was the daughter of another bishop in another state. Um, I know young women, like I literally know young women who still live with their fathers. That's what my daughters will do in my home. They live with their fathers, and their parents have to approve of the person that they marry. And they're safe in their home with their father, and they're taken care of. They don't have to work until they have a husband. So there are people who still live very traditional lives. Like I said, that's going to be my daughter's story. They will live with me until they are married. But we are surrounded by people who share our beliefs and values. So we are capable of doing that. I don't think you can be in the heart of Los Angeles, you know, living in a college dormitory with people who are promiscuous and successfully save your virginity and meet somebody else that's a virgin. I do think that we meet people in the groups that we run with. So if you're running around with people who do drugs, you're going to meet people on drugs. If you're running around with whores, you're going to meet other whores. If you're running around with people who have traditional values, you're going to meet people with traditional values. Also, remember that I said earlier, I think when people date, that you should not be picking up random people for dating, but that you should meet your potential partners through mutual acquaintances. Mutual acquaintances, people that know you both. So I think a lot of our behavior now makes it's not conducive to finding high quality partners, because we're trying to pick people off the street. We're trying to swipe left or right or whatever the hell these kids are doing. We're trying to do all of this remedial partner picking. And that's why it's quote unquote hard to find a good man or a good woman, and hard to find somebody that's a virgin. It's because virgins aren't on flippin' Tinder. Virgins aren't at the club, right? Most quality women aren't going to let you pick them up on the street because they're not about to go out with the perfect stranger, right? But see, like I said, it's all in how you're living your life. That's what I would say. Goodness Rated said a lot of men wife thoughts. True. Razi said, marry a virgin just because a woman isn't having sex doesn't mean that she respects herself. That is true, but everything is multifaceted. But that is definitely one of the criteria that I teach my children. That is one of the criteria that I teach my children. Yep, that's true, OG Bootsy. OG Bootsy said, Irene Yvette policed me, judged me, and convicted me as a nasty man. I did. I'm guilty, OG. I am guilty. Lindora is talking some sense here. Lindora said, protect your body. It's your greatest asset. Truth. It is your greatest asset. You have to protect it and treat it as if it is valuable. Don't devalue yourself and then expect somebody else to value you. That mess doesn't work. Oh, Eye of the Sea. I see. Truth. People are more protective of their social security number than their genitals. Imagine that crap. Okay. More protective of their social security than their whole life. Okay. Like that is just incredible to me. I cannot imagine just having sex with a total stranger, not with diseases out here that can literally kill you. I'm not trying to have a holy vagina, weeping green and yellow stuff. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to have some random person's child. Why would you not protect your genitals? Like, make it all make sense. That's what I mean by not value yourself. Captain Everyman said, so why do you show cleavage and wear tight dresses if you consider yourself a moral person? Well, I didn't say I considered myself a moral person, right? I say all the time, I am not perfect and everything I do is not right. What I said is you can have morals about you. Everybody's morals are in different places. Some people's morals tell them it's okay to have sex with kids. Other people's morals say you should only have sex with adults. Do we say that the people who say that you only have sex with adults are being on a high horse? No. So people's morality is very different, right? People's morality is in different places. I've been criticized on YouTube for showing cleavage. There are women out here that are in whole bikinis, okay? Spitting in cups and doing weird crap. So, I mean, everybody's morals are in different places. But just because I put on a tight dress doesn't mean that I have to be out in the world having sex with everybody. That is where I personally draw the line. Everybody else might draw the line somewhere else. I know women who are covered from head to toe. I used to be a covered Christian. I knew women covered from head to toe that were absolute whores in their conservative clothing. So what I will say is, for me, where I am now as a person is that I have a good balance. And I don't try to say that things that I do that are wrong are right. I feel like in today's society, a lot of people try to say that their wrongdoing is somehow right. You know, you have the pedophiles out here talking about they were born this way. You have the gays doing their thing. Everybody's trying to justify their wrongdoing. I'm never going to try to justify my wrongdoing. I have some videos on here that are tailored to Christians. I really don't think as Christian women, we should wear makeup, but I do wear makeup, but I don't try to justify my behavior or say that it's okay. Some things I do are just wrong. And that's like everybody. There are some, we just make bad decisions sometimes. So it is what it is. But that doesn't mean that just because you make one bad decision, you have to like totally make all the bad decisions. It's like, oh my gosh, I took a drink of liquor. Why don't I go do some crack? You know what I mean? Like, no, that's not how this thing works. But everybody's morality goes elsewhere. Did we delete his comment if he used the F word? Great Black, I'm sure you deleted it. Why Not said, what would you say to people who try to act oblivious and say stuff like, you really know why that lady didn't call? Oh, well, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I mean, people can act oblivious if they want to. You know, I could be wrong about why that lady didn't call, but all I'll say is this. A random woman approached my teenage son on the street and gave him her number under the guise of modeling. But when an adult called her, we never heard from her again. If she were serious about recruiting a model, she would have talked to the parent. And since I'm from California, I know people are perverted. I mean, how many times have many of us as teenagers, especially me, I developed early. I have a very shapely body. I had a lot of adults come on to me. So my life experience says that woman was up to no good. When my son told me the story, I had a feeling that that woman just was after him because she was attracted to him. I don't know about that, OG Bootsy. I can't with you and your commentary. Rosie Harris said, Irene, people should not be called hoes. Well, you guys know that I'm not a very politically correct person. So Rosie, maybe people shouldn't be called hoes, but I don't exactly excel at political correctness. So nobody should have that expectation from me. I think anybody who's I think anybody who's listened to me for you know, I think a lot of people who've listened to me for any amount of time know that I don't really excel at political correctness. So, yeah. You're right. Nobody should be called a hoe, but I will probably do. I call people retarded too. I mean, I use words. I use words. So let's see. I see like there's like 2 or 3 people in the chat who are incapable of having an adult conversation. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, this isn't a highly provocative conversation. It's talking about something that we all do. It's talking about something that every mother that you see has obviously engaged in. But I feel like some people still are very immature when it comes to talking about sex and relationships. It's like we're in high school. it's like, what is with the high school comments? I mean, why? We are literally all adults. Literally all adults here. That's what I don't understand. Rozzy said you can have sex and not get pregnant. You can't have sex repeated multiple times and not get pregnant. That's not possible. A woman who's having sex casually is going to get pregnant. A woman that is having sex is going to end up pregnant at some point. That is what comes with sex. The only way you're not going to get pregnant is to not have sex. Ariel said, I didn't know what we wore was indicative to our morals. She's a mess. But here, yeah, spitting in cups. We'll get there. Why not? Yeah, but I think it can be to an extent, right? But I think there's like a limit to that. And also like the judgment of it is varies too, because some people might think, that showing your cleavage is indicative of not having morality. Some people might think if you're not wearing a burqa, you're not indicative of having morality. This is what I will say. I will say this. Things run in tandem. I think obviously, I wouldn't even advise, y'all know what happened at the Puerto Rican Day Pride Parade in New York all those years ago, where women were literally being raped in the street. I feel those women probably wish they had more clothes on, because that crowd of men that was ripping off their clothes did not have much to take off. And it made them very vulnerable, right? But at the same time, I don't think not putting yourself in a full-on burqa or feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't show cleavage because then, men are going to look at me a certain way. Or, I think all of this shaming of women, like women are, solely responsible for men's behavior and men are just, wild beasts that cannot, I mean, I just think that that's stupid. Like there is a middle ground somewhere. Why not said spitting in cups? Yes. And people were buying her spit. Why not? This broad was selling her literal bath water. And she sold out. She was spitting in cups and people were buying her spit. I'm not even kidding. Literally buying her spit. That is crazy. Oh, thank you, Lindora. I appreciate that. Lindora said, you're absolutely beautiful. Showing your figure that you have maintained is a very feminine thing. Thank you. I appreciate that. And honestly, when I uncovered, one of the things I really struggle with was even like showing my hair, because a lot of people can find hair erotic. So I think it's harder for me to be shamed about what I do or don't wear, because I was a covered Christian for such a long time. And I'm just past being shamed. Also, although I recognize sexuality and things like that, I have given birth to a lot of children, like a lot of children. And so I just also view women and the female body and things like that as more than sexual objects. When I see breasts are very beautiful, they're very attractive, but I have nursed many children, you know, so I also see breasts as functional and something that is womanly and motherly and beautiful. So I think, you know, people at different levels of maturity view the human body differently, and I cannot adjust who I am as a person because somebody else is bankrupt mentally. Like, that is what I'm not going to do. I just got to put this up because it's funny, Great Black. Nikivia said remedial partner picking. Yeah, I don't know, Nikivia. That's just how it came out. Oh, hey, Sin Love. Do you want to come up? I'm so far behind in the comments. How far behind am I in the comments, you guys? I am so far behind in the comments, I think, because I just saw Sin. Oh, here's Sin. Let me figure out how to send you this in case you want to come up. I don't even know if you're still here, but I'm just blabbing about sex. I just really am. That's pretty much it. Okay, hold on. I'm going to try to send this. That was a bit of a tongue twister. Sin said, sex has nothing to do with morality as it is a biological function and moral immorality is subjective. Ooh, morality is subjective? That is so interesting. Oh, you want to come up? Okay, I see you. I feel like, is morality subjective? I think morality is subjective to a point. Yes, I would agree with that, to a point. But I think that some things are wrong. Is that an oxymoronic statement? I think morality is subjective to a point, but I think that some things are wrong. Like heat, you know how like one temperature could be hot to one person. Like, I know I take much hotter showers than my man, for example. So when he gets into my shower, he feels that is extremely hot. To me, it's not that hot. So heat is subjective, but at some point, it's really hot. Like, if flames are on your skin, that stops being subjective. Like, that's really fire. That's really hot. So I think both things can be true. Hold on, Sen. I'm sending you the link. I think that both things can be true. I think that something can be subjective to a degree and there still be a definitive truth about it at the same time. But we'll see. We'll see if Sin agrees with me when she comes up. I'm not going to talk about what goes on in my bedroom, but I don't approve of sex toys, period. Like, that's just my personal thing. Like, everybody can do what they want. I personally am not shoving a piece of plastic inside of me. Okay? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to shove something that's an inanimate object in my body. I don't care what it's shaped like. That's me personally. Like, I don't see, you know, like the cucumber challenge and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's me personally. Everybody has a different standard, but like, I personally wouldn't do that crap. I personally would not do it. Finley said there's a very thin line between a slut and a lady. I can't do it with him. I cannot do it with him. I can't, and I won't. Oh, yeah, for sure, Jamaican. Sin said, it does not matter whether or not you can live without sex. Sex is about procreation and survival, not morality. If people don't have sex, I did send it, by the way, Sin, they will cease to exist, so you cannot live without it. Well, I'm so mad you have a lion.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to be the ego, but also, you know, we got to represent Leo. So
I know, I want a lion now. You're representing for us both because Sin and I are
I
both
am. You know what, Irene? This is actually a great topic. Because, well, if we gotten when we get into the discussion, is sex a fundamental part of morality? And I say that it's not. I say religion is what made sex about morality. But if you think about it, sex is the same as eating, sleeping, or drinking water. It is a biological drive that literally doesn't have anything to do with whether you're moral, right, or wrong. It has to do with survival and continuity of your species. And so that is why, regardless of what we do, we cannot turn off the desire to have sex any more than we can turn off the desire to eat. Now, right and wrong, which I do think, obviously, I think certain aspects of sex shouldn't happen, which is like predatory sex, sex with underage people. But even whether that's right or wrong is subjective. There are certain cultures and certain groups of people who think that having sex with babies can cure diseases. Now, I think that's disgusting. I personally think those people should be shot in the head. I think they're the special place in hell if it exists for those type people. But some people don't think that's wrong. So that's why I say it's subjective. But if you take religion and religious beliefs out of it, which typically it's people who have religious beliefs, and I was one of them too, surrounding sex, then yes, they are going to make it about morality. But people who don't have religious affiliations, aside from predatory sex and things of that sort, they don't really attach sex to morality. It really is just a biological function.
Okay, this is what I will say. I think that to an extent, it is like eating and things like that. But in the same breath, I would say not so much. And this is what I mean. Like eating and breathing and sleeping and all that are necessary for the preservation of your own life. You don't have to have sex for the preservation of your own life. You have to have sex for the creation of new life. So I think they are somewhat different. Like you won't die without sex. But I do agree with you that people have natural and innate sexual drives. And although some religions, not all, do have sex as a compass for what sexual morality is, I do think that, for example, it depends on the religion you're looking at. Because, for example, in Hinduism, sexuality and sex is a part of their religion. So when we talk about the Kama Sutra and things like that, and all those many sexual positions, those are actually religious in origin. That's part of their practicing religion, is to engage in those sorts of sexual behaviors. And so the adverse to that would be like Christianity, right? Where there is a sexual morality that is imposed to prevent deviancy. So in Christianity, for example, you're not allowed to have sex with your siblings, right? That is something that is taught to be immoral, but there's actually a scientific reason for that too. It's because there's degradation of the genes and prevalence of mutations that normally wouldn't be present if you weren't dating within your family. It increases the chances that those things will be present. And a lot of things, at least in Christianity, kind of work that way. You're not allowed to have sex with, let's say, you're not supposed to look like a son shouldn't look at his father's wife, right? And things like that, to prevent incestual relationships and things like that. Or, and there's some confusion about this. I know in Judaism, in the Talmud, they talk about having sex with babies as something that's being okay. In Christianity, that is condemned. So I think you're right. Like religion does add a moral compass to it, whether it be Judaism co-signing having sex with babies, or Hindus co-signing, doing, hundreds of sexual positions, or Christians, saying don't have sex with your sister. But I think that it's sort of like the hot water situation, where some things are based on morality and some things are kind of an ingrained morality that all people have. Like most people who are healthy minded aren't going to look at, let's say, children as sexual objects. That's something that's ingrained in us naturally. Most people are going to want to have sex, but it's also the context in which you engage in that sex in that a lot of us will have a natural aversion or attraction to. So, for example, most people are going to be naturally heterosexual because there's nothing profitable about homosexual sex. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, and that's because nature says that unless you're heterosexual, you can't contribute to the continuity of your species. So that's another thing too. Homosexuals cannot procreate. If you can't procreate, you can't sustain yourself. So it's attached to your instinct for survival as well. But I that's why I said if you separate it from religion, because even with religion saying don't have sex with your cousin, that's biological, because there are biological consequences to having sex with your cousin and having sex with your siblings. There's biological consequences to that. Birth defects, diseases, inability to effectively procreate. So those are also tied to your ability to sustain yourself. And while you don't have to have it for one person, when we function, our biology functions on a basis of not only survival for ourselves, but survival of our species and of ourselves as a people, as a group. And so we have to look at that as well. But that's why I say take religion out of it. If you reduce sex down to its basic fundamental, it doesn't have anything to do with anything except for survival. And it actually is the same as food, water, sleeping, but all of those things require that you do something different. Like to sustain for your sleeping, you just go get in the bed. Your brain has to rejuvenate. But also, eating and drinking are different things. You will die if you don't eat or drink, but you'll also die if you don't sleep. And you will die out if you don't have sex. You're just going to. It'll just take a little bit longer.
So then my next question will be about being promiscuous. So a lot of people say that religion kind of stifles promiscuity, even though that is natural. I don't know if you would agree with that or not, but a lot of people would say that. And my argument would be a lot of things that I can speak about, like some religions, but I can only kind of speak about Christianity mostly because that's the religion I'm most familiar with, is, for example, promiscuity is not promoted, right, outside of marriage in Christianity. But what we see is that in the real world, even though we weren't given a reason for that, right? In the real world, we see that communities where there's a high level of promiscuity also have high levels of disease, of sexually transmitted disease or sexually transmitted infections, I think is what they're calling it now. So for example, in the homosexual community, specifically with gay men, they have the highest rates of disease prevalence because they are also the group of people that have the most sexual partners. Sometimes, several hundred, upwards of 1,000 is considered normal. So we actually see that in other communities as well. When we look at the Black community, although people might not agree with the religious aspect of not being highly promiscuous, there is biological evidence, as you would say, and health-based reasons to not engage in that behavior too. So is that kind of where, is it possible that some moralities are imposed because whether it's been explained to or not, whether you tell your child they can get, hit by a car and die or not, you might just impose the rule, don't cross the street, because you know that there is a risk there. Is it possible that some of these moral limitations were placed because there was a risk for things like increased disease and things like that with promiscuity? And then it becomes an argument of morality, but it's also an argument of health. Oh, what happened to you, Sin?
I had dropped off accidentally, but
okay.
Now I'm back.
Oh, I'm so glad I looked too, because I keep forgetting you can't just pop on this one.
But do you think that interracial sex is an issue of morality?
I think it can be.
Well, right, because I was going to say, if we go to it, because anything can be looked at as an issue of morality. And I know people tend to, and I'm saying this because of course, the recent thing that came out where you have the church denying them based on biblical principles. And, her basic thing was probably that it was an issue of morality. According to her religion, from what she understands and interprets, it is a sin of morality to have sex or to affiliate with interracial couples, because she felt like her religion prohibited, which her religion actually does prohibit it. If you think about the fact that it says don't mix with other nations, now people are looking for it to say black people and white people shouldn't mix, but nobody defined themselves in those terms back in those days. It was nations or tribes. So if you go by the biblical text, that's an issue of morality, but it's subjective because people want to be with other races of people. So they don't see it as the issue of morality, even though their religion prohibits it. That's why I'm saying we have to take religion out of it.
Okay, I actually heard the live that you did on, because I not the live, your video, because I watch your videos, because man, your content kills me. I don't know where you find these stories sometimes, but I did watch the one where you were talking about that, and I have to say that I would have to dispute the idea of tribe, the use of the word tribe in the Bible, because people could date outside of their tribe. There were just certain particular tribes they couldn't date, right? So, and that would normally be because they were engaged in some kind of immoral behavior. So like there were tribes that passed their children through the fire to Baal. You couldn't marry or have sex with the people from those tribes because they were, given over to hedonism and were killing their own children. So that seemed to be like more of like the tribal issues, because a lot of times too, and people, I know this triggers a lot of people, but this did happen in the Bible. Sometimes God would send men out to kill like everybody in a tribe, but he would let them keep the children. So virgin women would basically be children and unmarried women. But they would not allow them to keep the women who had been with a man, even though they were a different tribe. It just was the influence of women who had already laid with a man, because they might have picked up certain ways and things like that were not allowed to be kept. So I would have to say, like, I don't know about that per se, especially considering, depending on if you're Hebrew Israelite or not, and you think, most of the major players in the Bible were Black, that we did see relationships between people from different parts of the world. So that's what I would say to that. But I do think that,
the chat room, sorry to cut you off, but the chat room is case in point. They're interpreting it the way that they want to support what they want to do. Like saying tribe is different from race. I didn't just say tribe, I said nations and tribes. Actually, the Bible doesn't even speak about tribes when it mentioned don't mix with people. It actually says don't mix with other nations.
Yeah, that's true.
But you have them in there justifying it. This is why I say morality is subjective, because you see that with that woman, she felt that it was immoral for people to be interracial couples based on her religion. But you have people in the chat room saying, well, tribe is different from race. Well, you can't say that because you weren't there in biblical times. And considering actual race is a made concept recently, and we can literally track the two people who made it, then you're not going to see race mentioned in the Bible at all. So how would you then say that the Bible is a Black people's history book?
Well, okay, I will say this, not to the Bible being a Black people's history book so much, but to the nations thing, right? And I will say that I will agree with you that tribe is only mentioned in the Bible when it's identifying like the tribe of Judah or something like that, right? But nation is used more often. I agree with you there. So then for me, what I would point to are scriptures like when Paul was in Athens talking to the Greeks, who we all can agree are white, and he was telling them, he was talking about their gods.
But how can we agree that the Greeks are white when they started off as Black though, and the Bible doesn't mention race in there? See, this is why I say with people and their interpretations of it, race isn't mentioned at all in the Bible. It literally only mentions people by tribes or nations. So how do you know that it's not talking about nation interchangeable for race during that time? Because nobody mentioned terms in Black or white.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's assume that the Greeks there were black. Let's go ahead and assume that. So, and I'm making an argument, although over the course of 300 years, the color scheme of Greeks could have changed. But since we have some like artwork and things like that from like around 300 years following that, I would roll with that. But let's say they were black. Nevertheless, when Paul was speaking in Athens, he said that God made all people one blood and that he appointed their place on the earth before times. And the Bible also teaches us that God is no respecter of persons as far as like physicality goes. And it actually goes to give some physical examples of what people look like. And then when it also talks about groups of people who were historically against each other, we get stories like the Good Samaritan, where you have a person from the Samaritans who were actually considered enemies of the Jews, but that person ended up being actually a friend, and that is the story of the Good Samaritan. So I would look at examples like that, you know, not being a respecter of persons, the story of the Good Samaritan, the discussion Paul had with the Greeks where he says God made all nations one blood. So if I were having a debate with somebody like with regard to, you know, does the Bible promote interracial dating or not, I would say God looks at people's hearts, not people's physical appearance. There's actually a scripture that says that man looks at the outward appearance, but God searches the hearts.
Hold on. Right, but if it says in the Bible, don't mix with other nations, but then it says all nations are of one blood, then why even say don't mix with nations? You can't mix something that's one in and of itself. See, this is why I talk about the contradictions and people interpreting in however they want to, because to say don't mix with other nations, the other is to denote a difference in them. But then to say all nations are of one blood, that contradicts the notion that there are differences among nations. So who do we think that they were referring to when the Bible says don't mix with other nations? Because there's actually multiple different scriptures that you can go through all throughout the Bible that says, referring to you not mixing with others, you not mixing from those who are different. So who do we think that it's referring to when it says other nations? And how would you tell when we know that sometimes they give descriptors, but race isn't actually mentioned?
Yeah, that is a really good point. So this is what I will say to that. Maybe I can use like an actual example of, because normally there's like a reason attached to it. So let's look at an example of that. I think that would probably be the easiest way. So there is a long list: the Hittites, the Gerishites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites. It gives this long list. And it talks about how God's this is for those of you who care. I'm looking in Deuteronomy 7:3, or just Deuteronomy chapter 7, right? So this is one of those things where they're being told not to mix with any nations. They're saying, don't take marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto your son. And then he gives us a long list of all these people that they cannot have sex with. And this is why he says, this is the reason he gives. He says, for they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against thee. So it wasn't about their physicality. It was about their behavior. And that's why I'm saying most times when in the Bible, if you look at the context of those kind of scriptures, what you'll find is that the reason is because those people were evil in some way. And that because of their behavior, God didn't want his people picking up on their behavior. Now that would be more of an argument for not.
And that's what I was going to say. Either way, it would still point towards white people, because whose behavior is the worst of all people on this planet? I mean, you could just look throughout their history. So even if either way we pitch it, even if you went through behavior, if you went through a descriptor, which didn't they refer to whiteness of the skin as leprosy in the Bible?
I mean,
I believe that was the descriptor for white.
That is definitely true. It talks about, but I feel like, well, leprosy is when the skin turns white, like in a literal sense. That's what leprosy looks like even today. But in all fairness, leprosy is the sort of thing where it's like kind of splotchy, kind of looks like vitiligo kind of white. But for sure, I feel like those scriptures are kind of evidence because it was such an obvious change. More of anything, it's kind of evidence of the fact that the people that were struck with leprosy likely had darker skin. But yes, you are right. The Bible does talk about leprosy and it describes it as white. That's true. That's true. I can't argue with that. That's true. And I would actually agree
But
with
see,
you.
that's Irene, but that's just what I mean about morality in sense of right or wrong being subjective to whoever wants to do whatever they want to do. Because you have a lot of Black people, and obviously it's not applying to you, you have a Black man. You have a lot of Black people who want to be with white people because of their opinion of white being good in their mind. So when someone throws out, okay, well, the Bible says you shouldn't be having sex with white people, you have a barrage of Black people. And there was something on Hollywood Unlocked where if you would have just looked at the comments, it was just a cesspool of Black people just saying, no, this is not God. God doesn't discriminate. God actually does discriminate according to the Bible and discriminate quite often. But they were in there saying God doesn't discriminate. This is hatred. This is evil, because their subjection of what morality is telling them that it is okay to be with white people. Although the Bible actually said that doesn't. We can sit here, even if me and you broke it down, any which way we go, it's probably going to lead to those other nations being white people that you're not supposed to mix with. But now I'm personally not a Bible believer. I can debate the Bible because of how much I was into Christianity, which is, I probably know it better than anybody in the chat room. I can debate it, but ultimately I believe certain things in it, but I don't believe everything in it because it's too contradictory. But people just do stuff based on what they want to do. If they want to have sex with white people and they want to be in interracial relationships, they don't really care what the Bible says. They don't care if it's moral. They don't care if it's right or wrong. They don't care if literally their God could come down and write it in the sky and say Black people and white people should not be together. Even if the Bible did say that, they would still do it because they want to do it. And that's why I say when we talk about morality, morality is in the eye of the beholder. What's right or wrong is in the eye of the beholder. So how then can we turn around and take a biological function, which having sex with white people isn't a biological function. You don't need to do that. Actually, it's more detrimental and harmful to you on a biological and social level than anything else. But they really want to do that. They'll say they need to do that, but then the people who are having sex and acting from an actual biological standpoint are somehow immoral, but you're actually doing something that your spirituality and your religion to you and your God forbid you to do, but because you want to do it, you're going to interpret it however you want to interpret it. It's not immoral.
Well, this is what I will say. First, I want to address something Dillard Pat said, which is, why is there a biblical conversation with someone who has no belief in the Bible anyway? And I believe somebody kind of seconded that. I can't remember who did it. Sorry. IC said the same thing. So I want to address that first, and then I'll speak to what you said, Sin. I want to say this. First and foremost, I'm very fond of Sin. She's very intelligent, and I respect her, despite the fact that Sin is not Christian. Second of all, I want to say that anybody who's read a Bible knows for a fact that Christ spent a great deal of time speaking to sinners, and people criticized him too. They were like, why is he sitting with those people? Why is he taking dinner with those people? Why is he talking to those people? So the idea that I can't speak to Sin about the Bible because she's not Christian, I think is just very flawed. And it's literally the same accusation that was hurled at Christ. Number one. Number two, I would have to say that the conversation is very profitable if anybody is listening, and people can take what they want from what Sin says or what I say. But for example, we discussed not mingling with other nations. Sin gave her opinion and I gave mine, which was to provide a scripture of an example of when that was the case. And the reason God said not to had a lot to do with behavior. And not skin color, but, you know, and if you guys, and I gave that chapter and verse, so if you guys go look it up, you can read it for yourself. It actually says, tear down their altars, you know, don't worship their gods, all of this sort of thing.
There is
So
literally one that says, come from amongst them and destroy everything they ever touched.
that was often, well, that's often the case because, like I said, in the examples that I've read in the Bible, it's always been because that people were debased morally. And God did not want you having sex with them or reproducing with them because they would turn God's people's hearts to their deviant ways. Now, this is so I just want to be very clear that there's nothing wrong with sitting here having a conversation with somebody who doesn't agree with you. I've seen Christian Muslim debates. I've seen, Christian Jewish debates. I've seen Christian atheist debates. There's literally nothing wrong with it. And Christ would sit down and converse with people all the time who are not of the faith. And people said the same thing about him. So I just think as Christians, we can't just act like, why are we talking to these people? I just don't even understand that. Now to what you were saying, Sin, as far as morality, I think morality is something that is finite and is subjective at the same time. I think both things can be true. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think both things can be true. So for example, let's say morality about physical appearance, right? So religions have different bases for physical appearance, but even people who aren't religious have different bases for physical appearance. I know people who are not Christian who have definitely judged me based on my physical appearance, what I wear, what I do, things like that, just how I look. Now, on one extreme, you'll have like Muslims that want women like in a full-on burqa, right? On the other extreme, you have religions that are, very lascivious in nature. And so they actually feel like exposing the female and male body or sex magic and things like that are valuable. So it's actually encouraged to be more sexy and things like that to kind of harness power. Those are two very different ends of the spectrum. So obviously that's a swing of morality from one degree to the other, fully covered to basically naked. But I think that there is a level of morality that exists in all people. Most people want to be clothed to some degree, right? And what we can say is that morality, just using clothing for an example, right? Morality, or at least the behavior or mindset of a person, can often be determined by what they wear, dependent on where the culture stands. So for example, back in the day, prostitutes used to be really the only ones that wore the thigh-high boots, the really short skirts. They would try to show as much of what was being sold as possible to attract customers and clearly identify themselves as prostitutes. Now we live in a time where it is more common for the average woman to dress much like when I was growing up. You would actually literally only see prostitutes wearing. That's become par for the course as far as regular female clothing goes. Every Fashion Nova haul is basically like, an episode of Pretty Woman or, one of those documentaries of Streetwalkers. But, so in that, I agree with you, it's fluid, right? But I think that there's a base level of morality that all people have. So there are natural aversions that we have as far as sex goes, as far as who our sexual partners are, what ages are appropriate, if we're going to have sex with animals or not, things like that. So and maybe we don't call that morality, but in a sense it kind of is. And then there are the variations of what is the base that most of us are just born with. And I think those things are flexible. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I definitely agree with that. But even still, I want to go back to what you said about when you said that verse about them corrupting and turning people to their evil ways of life. Who does that sound like? With the trans and the LGBTQ and all these other, who does that sound like? It sounds like white people's degenerate ways corrupting Black people.
Okay, so I cannot disagree with that. Looking historically speaking, Many of the deviant behaviors that we see in society today are very commonplace with white people. I guess this is what I would say. I would say that overwhelmingly, it is white people who are into deviant behaviors. It was the Greeks that were lovers of boys, and that debased women in society. It was, the Romans, the Greeks, the Europeans, even to this day, that have the highest rates of child sexual abuse, homosexuality being commonplace, misgendering or degendering children, and things like that. And even in the United States, we see that most of these far left liberal movements are spearheaded by white people. We look at feminism and the usurping of male authority and devaluation of women and men being a white female movement. So I will definitely agree with that on the whole. But I will say, like, from a Christian perspective, what I also recognize is that all humans, right, have a chance of redemption. But I would say overwhelmingly, I would give pause to a culture that is heavily debaucherous and wicked. And I can't really disagree with Sin, whether people in the chat like it or not, that we see the greatest prevalence of these behaviors in whites, because I mean that is true, right?
They're
So
just
I'm
they're just
glad
in the
about it.
chat room. They're in the chat room and they're just salty because I'm showing them according to their spirituality how immoral they are, because they're choosing to have relationships and procreate with a group of people who, based on let's give it behavior. Based on behavior over thousands of years, they are prohibited from doing. Because even if we take out Greek in history and look at what they're doing now, if we go to the one single group of people whose behaviors are extremely immoral, debaucherous, degenerate, depraved, and evil, who would that be?
I mean, I can't disagree with that. John Goldsby asked, "All white people?" ? Okay,
Well,
so
it says all nations are of one blood. So according to you can't separate it now, because now it says all nations are of one blood. So the Bible doesn't says give them a chance to redeem themselves. It says come from amongst them and burn and destroy everything that they touched. So according to your religion, for the Christians, you are immoral based on your desires, because you've been corrupted by the people that you chose to intermingle with.
Well, this is what I will say, because John asked all white people. So this is what I will say. Although I can't disagree with Cynthia that where we see the greatest prevalence of these behaviors is in Caucasian people or white people of various kinds, because all white people aren't from the Caucasoid Mountains. What I will say is this, is that when the Bible talks about it, it doesn't identify them by the color of their skin, it identifies them by their behavior. So a Black person, for example, who's fallen into the behavior that is common mostly amongst whites would be just as disastrous. And what I would say about all white people is that I don't think if I see a white baby, like a newborn baby, that baby's going to naturally grow up and be a freak. But I do think that if they grow up in what is prevalent in their community and with the influences of adult whites who are corrupt overwhelmingly, that it's going to be very hard for them to not be. So I would say, I would think it was possible, and that's why in some of the scriptures Sin is referring to, it will say that you have to kill all the women who have been with a man, that you have to kill all the men and all the boys, and that you can only keep the virgins, which would be the young women who are unmarried. So sometimes that concession is made. And so my argument there would simply be that I don't think every single white person is corrupt. I don't think, obviously, some white people are, from a Christian perspective, are saved and things like that. I would just say that just as the Bible speaks to some groups of people being just almost wholly given over to debauchery, that I can't really argue against Sin's point from historical facts that a lot of these behaviors are not heavily prevalent more in white society than any other society on earth. I mean, I think that is about as fair as I can be with my statement.
And see, this is the psychology and why I say it, because even with murder, people think it's immoral to murder and kill people. But the Bible says there is a time to kill. If you look through the Bible, there are certain circumstances where people were instructed to kill. So that can even be subjective. Whether murdering someone, it's not even an issue of morality, depending on the circumstance, according to the Bible.
Well, I don't think that it's necessarily subjective, because the Bible says that we are to understand doctrine, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. So I think the one thing we have to shy away from is taking any one statement in the Bible and using that as the end all be all. We do have to compare scripture to scripture, like it says, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little, and then that gives us the whole picture of doctrine. But definitely, when the Bible says thou shalt not kill, it's talking about two kinds of murder, right? An unjust murder, right? The shedding of innocent blood, because the Bible teaches us God hates hands that shed innocent blood, which is different from punishment.
But
And
isn't innocence subjective, though? Don't people have different opinions on who's innocent and who's deserving?
well, I mean, and I guess that's why, at least if we talk about it from a Christian perspective, right? There are certain things that are reasons to kill people. And normally it's things that are done that a person can't redeem themselves from. So, for example, you guys will hear me say a lot, if a person has sex with a child, that they should be killed, right? There's something in the Bible that they call reprobate. You'll hear that often said about homosexuals in the Bible, that they should be killed. They're considered reprobate, meaning they've gone so far deep, off into left field somewhere. They can't be revived from that. They can't be brought back from that. So then you do have to kill them, or their behavior is going to become pervasive in the community. That's one camp of people. Other than that, the Bible normally calls for physical chastisement, and this might make people uncomfortable, but this is the reality. There are no prisons or jails in the Bible. You either provide retribution through replacement times 7 of what you've taken or stole or how you've wronged somebody. And sometimes that is also paired with physical punishment, so lashings or something like that. But people aren't jailed in biblical society as far as God's people go. But that is what I mean for punishment. So murder is appropriate as a form of punishment for reprobate people. And that's clearly kind of laid out in scripture as to what that is, and then what the alternative punishments are when that extreme is not needed. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat room and seeing how corrupted certain people are based on their desire to have sex with white people. It is actually quite interesting, because everything goes out of the window when it comes to you saying they shouldn't mix with this group of people who historically and presently have been, and really towards them, the most evil on the face of the planet. And that's really, really interesting. The psychology of it is so interesting, but it's even if you look at a lot of Black people today who are in relationships with white people, we can honestly say do they not tend to take on, by and large, the mentality of their white partner?
Well, I will have to say that definitely what I've seen here on YouTube, and this is why I don't personally promote hate dating and hate mating, right? I do feel that whilst I clearly don't have a problem with interracial dating, like me personally, I wouldn't promote it amongst Black people. I think that we deal with so much, we have so many issues, like collectively, with self-acceptance, being comfortable in our skin, being comfortable in our hair, all of those things, that we often kind of idolize whiteness and we hold it up as the pinnacle of what is good and desirable. I've definitely heard people say they don't want to create dark-skinned children, so they might date and reproduce with a white person to produce a child that will have a more comfortable place in society. I think that dating out based on hatred for Black men, hatred for Black women, hatred for yourself, your hair, your skin, I think that is very problematic. And I have to be honest that when I hear people talk about dating out, they're not talking about, I met this great person and we fell in love. They're talking about Black men aren't crap. So go get yourself a white guy. They provide, they do this, this, and that. I hear, Black women aren't crap. White women are so much more submissive and attractive and that. I hear things like that. And I've actually, and Sin, you covered this a few times, where Black men have come on YouTube and talked about how they can't act like themselves around the families of their spouses or girlfriends and things like that, and that there's a compromise of their Blackness. And I do think that that is more often than not the case. So what a lot of people will say, well, then Irene, what about throwing yourself on the chopping block? I will say that my personal experience isn't indicative of the average experience. So I can't give advice based on my personal experience. I got married to somebody who had no parents, was an orphan, and was from New York and lived in California with me. And so the only family around was my Black family. But that's not going to be the case for everybody, where the only family around is your Black family, where the industry that the person works in is essentially a Black industry and things like that. I think more often than not, the case is that you find Black people immersing themselves in the family, in the lifestyle, in the culture and traditions of their white partner, and sort of watering down their Blackness to accommodate for that white person. And that's what a lot of people say for their own personal experiences. So, I mean, I have to agree with Sin in that regard. And that's why you guys know I don't promote interracial dating, because I feel like very few of our people that I hear talking about it are doing it in any sort of way I think is healthful. And I think even if you wanted to date out, we as a community have to heal before that can even be done safely. Right now, I don't see the way that it's being done.
But white people have shown that they're not going to change their behaviors as they've been engaging in them for thousands of years, to the point that it is their nature. And quite frankly, they don't see anything wrong with it. So you still have Black people, specifically in the chat room, rationalizing, picking and choosing and interpreting the Bible however they want to in order to suit the depraved behaviors that they want to engage in. And this is one of the reasons why I separated from Christianity, because I recognize that a lot of Christians do this. They don't follow it based on the Bible. They follow the Bible based on what they want to do. And they interpret the Bible based on what they want to do and whether they want to justify it as right or wrong. And that's a problem.
Well, I mean, I will agree with that. Like for me personally, I always am, because you guys know, for those of you who have been listening to my content for a while, that I take a lot of pleasure in talking to other people who identify as Christian. And you'd be surprised how varying all the beliefs are. But what I will find is that most Christian sects have a personal interpretation of the Bible, and they will often even have a supplemental book. So they'll have their own version of the Bible, a translation just for them. They'll have a supplemental book that kind of expounds on what the Bible is supposed to say. Even the Jewish people do this. They have the Talmud to expand on, their interpretation of the Bible. Few people just use the Bible and take it as what's there. And often we see this even with gay people. There's a scripture that says, two men are laying in a bed, one will be taken and the other is not. And they'll go, see, homosexuality in the Bible, it's totally okay. So I do agree that it's common in Christianity for people to try to use the Bible to justify what they want, or to twist what the Bible says to say what they want. But I think a good measure of ourselves as Christians is when we can read the Bible for what it is, and if it doesn't fit our narrative, or if it doesn't co-sign our behavior, that we still let the Bible stand as is. And, the Bible says, let God be true and every man be a liar. So for example, I know that the way I dress is not appropriate biblically. I know that wearing makeup is not appropriate biblically, but I'm not going to try to adjust the Bible to my behavior. I'll adjust my behavior to scripture. But I don't think that that's common. And I think hypocrisy and sort of morphing of scripture to suit purposes does turn a lot of people off from Christianity. I can't really argue with that.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I don't see any other group of people disregarding their religion and interpreting their religious texts to support their desire to lay with their oppressor. And even if it wasn't against it in the Bible, which I really do believe that other nation is talking about this group of people, assuming some people argue they weren't even around during the time, but whatever. The reality is, nothing should have to tell you to stop being with the people who are trying to exterminate you. That's just the reality. Your brain should tell you that. Your instinct for survival should tell you that. But that's why I say Black people have been corrupted. Many of us have been corrupted just by being in close proximity to them. That's why we take on their attitudes, their behaviors. I mean, just look at how much we're impacted by the LGBTQ and trans movement. And we know that this, to many people, is a form based on religion of corruption. These are lifestyles that are prohibited from the Bible. They will be considered debaucherous behaviors.
Well, I mean, I can't disagree with that. And I will say this. I think like a cautionary sort of thing, and this is kind of harder for people like me who grew up in really diverse areas where racial tensions were not super high, more urban areas. This is probably harder for like our group to accept. But what I will say is we do have to look at the dangers that come in with interracial dating with regard to our functionality in society and progressing Black people, right? Setting aside like everything else. Number one, and this is a conversation that Sin and Nyla and I had, if it comes down to it, how likely are you to fully petition for a Black cause if you have a white wife or husband, if you have a grandparent that's white? It's going to really soften you on the issues. Number two, it leaves us open to infiltration, right? Because then they become privy to things. And honestly, it's hard to have an honest relationship with the white person, even a friendship, where you can speak freely about the realities of racial dynamics and them not be offensive or be offended by you. Or you feel you have to kind of water down what you're saying so that they don't feel accused by you. Also, we have to look at interracial children and how often interracial children are weaponized against us. You guys know I recently did something here on this channel where I showed how interracial, quadroon, octoroon, even mulatto, Aboriginal people were literally replacing Black Aboriginals, where you had people with blonde hair and blue eyes claiming and being accepted legally as Aboriginals and taking jobs and benefits that were put aside for the Black Aboriginals. So this opens up a sort of Pandora's box and something that could be insidious, because we know that the breeding out of Blackness is something that was intentionally done and state sanctioned throughout much of the world. So I think these are all things to consider. I don't think society, even if you have no problem with it, in theory, I don't think society is even in a place right now where we can engage in such behaviors safely, because we can see how the weaponization of those interactions is still happening in current time against our people. And I think that's something that we have to consider when we think about the betterment of Black people as a whole.
What I think is that at this point we can say Black people's desire for interracial relationships is actually evil at this point. The reason why I say it's evil, because they'll do it at the expense of the survival of their community. They don't care how detrimental it is to our numbers as a people. They don't care how detrimental it is to our progress. They don't care about the psychology of the children or how detrimental that is, they will engage in these behaviors at all costs. And that is what I think makes it evil. And that's why I say they are corrupt. They're not even, it would be different if they were entering into them saying, well, let me just do this to better my community. But it's either about hatred for Black men, hatred for Black women, hatred for Blackness in general, the desire to not create Black children, colorism. Need we add to the list of the negative reasons why they enter into these relationships? And so even if I considered even like, I don't need to be a Christian to give merit to certain things in the Bible. I really don't need to. And that's why I said I don't believe in it fully, but there are certain things I believe in. Like what it says, the truth will be given to the masses, but only a small amount of them will actually hear the truth. How it says only a small portion of people in general are going to survive. Most of them are corrupt in some type of way. And I do believe that that is true. The evidence of it is all around me. So I believe in stuff that the evidence support. Black people's desire to intermingle with this group of people is very evil. And I believe that by way of being in close proximity to them and being under their dominion and their rule and their interpretation of what spirituality and morality and everything else is, many of us have become corrupted. And that's why I believe in the Bible, when it talks about that other nation that you're not supposed to mix with, least you become corrupted and go off their ways. That is obviously the dominant society. Like it just have to, if you consider all of the evidence. And I think none of that matters to them. And you can look at the chat room and see the corrupt mentality and the reprobated mind, because even in the chat room, the minute that you say, don't mix with these people, and you can list out 100 different ways that is detrimental to them, they don't care. And to me, to desire something that is wrong that much, that makes you just as evil, if not more, than what you're desiring to get into.
Well, I definitely think that people get really triggered when you talk about not dating out. People do get very triggered by that. What I would have to say is that if we can't recognize that, look, let's talk seriously about our positionality in the world. And I keep going back to this because it's just so horrific. But if white people who travel abroad more than Black people, right? If white people can travel abroad and go to countries where Black people are literally treated as second-class citizens, like completely segregated into certain parts of the country, brutalized and all that. If white people can go to India and go to a human safari where they view Black people in the wild the way you would an animal, if white people can go to places where effectively Black people are little more than slaves, then it's the dynamic in a relationship with a person where that is their world experience. With a Black person is not always going to be the healthiest. And then you also have to recognize that you would have to be hyper vigilant with any children that you created to not create the sort of mixed person that would be weaponized against your own people. And they are weaponized against Black people. And that level of hyperdiligence, I think, is not something that our people are going to engage in, especially when so many of us date out because of self-hate or hate of our counterparts in the Black community. So at the very least, what we should say amongst ourselves is, even if you want to, even if it's okay, from a moral standpoint to you, that we can't move as whole people until we address the problems that we have in the Black community. And we can't date in a dynamic where our partner literally has a position and power over us, because then you're not even safe in that relationship. And so I think those are considerations that we should have, and that's a way to look at it, because I feel like we always feel like we have to rush to the defense of white people whenever these conversations happen, or it somehow strikes fear in our hearts that we won't be able to have access to them, or as I've heard some Black men say, that is a sign of you doing well as having access to a white woman, as long as we hold them up on side of sort of a God pedestal, we can never actually have healthy relationships with them. If the light eyes and the straight hair and the, you know, the light skin, the white skin is something that we are putting up on a pedestal akin to God, then what kind of weird relationship would we be engaging in? And honestly, most of our people think that way. And we know that they think that way because if they didn't think that way, society would look very different right now.
Yeah, that's why I say that they're corrupted. And that's just the reality. It's behaviors coming from a place of corruption, not love. And they'll try to package it as love. But if you're moving towards something because you love something that's evil, it's still evil. It still can't be love. And that's why, because hatred towards yourself and your people and the desire to exterminate them genetically, that's still evil. So you're moving from a place of evil. And that's why I say, even if it wasn't talking about them, there is something to be said about Black people and their attachment to this group of people and desire to mix with this group of people who have proven to be very evil since their there's not an era of time where they haven't been engaging in any evil behaviors. Like we do realize that they've literally, since their existence, been perpetuating evil throughout the planet nonstop. So just based off that alone, and that's why I say, you know, maybe Black people have been given over to their evil desires. I know that we're not going to progress while it's going on. I know that for a fact. We will not progress as a people. And we can debate whether that's because of spirituality, the Bible, or God, or whatever. We're not going to progress while it's going on. That I can guarantee. Somebody can quote me when I die and we're still in the same situation, maybe worse. We're not going to get out of it while interracial unions are going on. We're just not going
to. Rosie said, Black people have been taught to love everyone. I think we're just loving. I think Black people are human, and in a sense of like spiritually, we're very human, right? There's a lot of things that we are naturally have aversions to, and we have a heart for other people. So I think Black people typically approach all of humanity with love because we haven't lost our humanity yet. I don't think we have to hate white people, but we also have to recognize that love is not enabling, right? So if you love white people, that's fine, but know that part of love is not enabling their fuckery, right? Part of love is not enabling somebody to basically be destructive. Sometimes love is chastisement and correction and knocking people down a few pegs and putting them in their place. Sometimes that is the most loving thing you can do. So fine, if Black people want to love white people, okay, love them, but love them in the correct way, which is the way you would a child that misbehaves. You're not going to let them run rampant. You're going to place them where they need to be based on their capabilities as a child, and you're going to punish them and correct them. And that is loving. So that's a form of love I think we have to learn as Black people, is that for those who don't want to be accused of hatred and things like that, just know that sometimes tough love is needed. And that is often really a form of love. And for my Christian Blacks, I will say, you know, the Bible says the Lord chastens who he loves. So we know that chastisement is a part of love. We do that with our children too. Do you know what I mean? He who spares the rod hates his child. The thing is that chastisement and correction is part of love. So we can still have these conversations. We can still want to not see them in power because they're a corruptive force. We can still, you know, be honest about their shortcomings and what needs to be done to correct them without being hateful people. So I think that is a way that some of us need to think about it. I have a question. Well, I don't have a question. Ariel wants to know if we think women who participate in polygamous relationships have less self-esteem.
I don't think so, if that's what they want to do. But I have to jump off. I would literally love to keep this conversation going, because just the whole, when you talk about the whether sex is morality and dating and stuff, it always goes into different, very interesting topics. But I don't have time to. I mean,
That's
maybe
okay.
later if you want to continue it, then I can. But
Yeah. Well,
um,
let me know if you're available later. That's fine, because I've been on here longer than I wanted to too. But then when you were down there, I knew you'd come up and say something that was awesome. So thanks for coming up,
it's
saying
a
you guys.
it's a really good topic, and I was like, oh
So,
yeah, I like talking about sex. I like talking about relationships, and so the two merging, it goes into different stuff. I even, to a degree, like talking about religion because of where it goes. But I'm gonna jump off. Thanks for inviting me, and I'll definitely let you know, because I will be available later.
okay. All right. Bye bye, Sven.
All right, bye.
Okay, you guys. Sarah, I'm going to go to, only because you guys know I try to keep these lives around an hour, and we have definitely broken hour. But I did think it would just be a really fun conversation for us to have, an adult conversation for us to have. And when we can have it again. I think there's a way to tackle these things in a way that's not perverted, but that's very, very real. And so for those of you who did not hear the beginning of this, that was interesting. We talked about a little bit of everything. Don't cringe, don't grab your pearls, but we talked about anal sex, and we talked about dating your friends, exes, and we talked about objectification of women. We talked about a lot of things in this live, all the way down to religion and the positionality of morality in society based on religious beliefs. So we have really gone a lot of places in this live. So for those of you who missed the first part, double back, take a listen to it while you're driving to work or cleaning your house. And yeah, Sin and I will come back. I think Sin and I were supposed to do something purely on religion. And I ask that you Christians not be offended by talking to people who are not Christian about the Bible. Honestly, I mean, weren't we all not Christian at some point? So I don't think there's any harm in it. And I think without hearing how other people feel about the Bible and what their beliefs are about the Bible, you won't even know what to study so that you can actually discuss things with them and respond to them in a way that actually makes sense and is related to what they have to say. So just having a closed mind, I don't think is going to be very helpful for us as Christians. We need to care about what other people think and believe. And we need to try to understand those things from a Christian perspective so we can engage in dialogue with them. It's not, we're not trying to, hide ourselves on a hill somewhere. We live in the real world, right? So let's do that. So with that said, you guys, I am going to talk to you guys later. And yeah, thank you for hanging out with me all this time. Bye-bye.